L'chaim, l'chaim. Look at that. Nimshach werden alle in Yonim a ganz Jahr in a guten Eifen. Shabbos Breishis, they have Shachas a ganz Jahr. And since it's negated, the ganz Jahr is now is Yankev Halachadarke that the Frierdiker Rebbe said, the Lashon that Tishrei we pack the luggage, we pack, and then a whole year we unpack. So we should unpack all the good things that were Nimshach. The negative things that came, with all these Schwierigkeiten, that should be forgotten. The good things are nitzchi, and these things are not nitzchi. When it was, and that's it. The good things will be nimshach for a whole year. L'chaim, l'chaim. Just derech hagav, it's not negate anything. It is negate l'maisa, but that this whole word, as vim mishtal zachavek Shabbos Breishis geht es azay a ganz yor. It's be'etzem. It was said by the Tzemach Tzedek b'negei ma'ivers on the sedre. You have to be ma'aver the sedre shnai mikveh chatargum every Friday, or even if you do it on Shabbos, it's better if you do it on Friday. Some people have a hard time. For some reason, people have a hard time. A lot of people are not makbid. It's that halacha shulchan aruch, halacha in Gemara. You have to be ma'aver sedre. Shnai mikveh chatargum, and the people have a hard time. The Welt even says it's a vettel to the simen in shulchan aruch of Hilchas Shnai mikveh chatargum is simen reish pei hei, which is Rofa b'yadeim, it's Shvach. So the Tzemach Tzedek said, "Vi mishtel zachavek Shabbos Breishis." If you manage to do the Ma'aver Seder Shnai Mikvatarm Shabbos Breishis, this helps you that the whole year it should be easier to the Ma'aver Seder. So anybody who didn't do it yet, still that chance till Tuesday, you still could do it, and it'll be nimshach for a whole year. Anyway, this is just derech hagadik v'zach. But I want to go a little bit into. I always say this, I'll say this again. What can I say here that everyone doesn't know? Everyone knows all the different things now. But it's so good always somebody to repeat it and mention it again. So it's talked about. If it's talked about, it brings it back to the Zikon. It's Meir. So Meir, myself, and then Meir, everybody else. We're saying here that Shabbos Breishis geht es a ganz Jahr. What's the shot? Why? Because the beginning, when you set the tone, that's how it goes. So since the beginning of the year, you set the tone in a certain good way, maybe a whole year it'll go that way. The shaila is, if you're talking about setting the tone at the beginning of the year, why is it Shabbos Breishis? It's Rosh Hashanah. Rosh Hashanah is the beginning of the year. It should have been a klal. Rosh Hashanah, because Rosh Hashanah is the head, and the way things are in the head, that's how it's nimshach throughout the whole body. So it's nimshach throughout the whole year. Why do we say Negei Shabbos Breishis? And the Pashtas, the reason is, I think Rebbe explained once, because everything starts with Torah. Everything depends on the Torah. The whole creation of the world came through Torah, and Nistakel Be'eraisa Bar Almas, everything is on Torah. The beginning of the year means the beginning of the Torah. So, therefore, when we talk about what's called the beginning of the year, it's when we start the Torah, when we start reading Parshas Breishis. So that's why Vimi Shabbos Breishis, which is the beginning in the Inyanim Torah, that's how it's going to go for a whole year. And Shabbos Breishis is connected to Simchas Torah. So it's the beginning of the year in learning of the Torah, Behemshech to Simchas Torah. When we finished, then we started learning the Torah again. And Shabbos Breishis is connected to Simchas Torah, not only because on Simchas Torah we started reading Breishis, so now we again read Breishis, the whole parsha. It's also because it's in that week. The Rebbe would, I would say not every, but kimat every Farbrengen of a Shabbos after Yom the Pagre, the first beginning would be this Nakuda. The Rebbe would say it in different ways, in different forms, in different surahs, but the Nakuda was always the same. That the Shabbos after a special day is the aliyah of all the inyonim of that day. If it's a Shabbos after Yud B'Stamus, so Shabbos after B'Stamus has the aliyah of Yud B'Stamus. Shabbos after Shavuos, so Shabbos after Simchas Torah, based on the posig Vayichulu Hashemayim Vayichulu, based on the Avud Raham, that everything goes up l'mayla. The aliyah of everything is on of all the Amshachas and Yonim is on the Shabbos after the day. So the Shabbos after Simchas Torah is the main thing. That's when there's an aliyah of Simchas Torah. So all the Amshachas and all the Yonim Simchas Torah are connected to the Shabbos. And like I said, the Rebbe would say this always. Now, Shabbos has two inyonim. Shabbos, and the Rebbe would say that many times. I remember in the Chofsel later also, the Rebbe would, every Farbrengen, before or after, this was the word. Bemis Shabbos is negated to the week that comes. So it's negated to the next week. Shabbos, my name is Baruch in Kula Yamin. But Shabbos is also negated to the week before, the Vaychulu. So even the Rebbe said that the Shabbos is negaya to before and after. Both, not it's, but Lepel in the Indian that we're talking about is that the Shabbos after Simchas Torah. So the Indian of Simchas Torah is on Shabbos. Now, if Shabbos comes out right after Simchas Torah, Chavada and Avada, that's when the Rebbe would mamish. The whole Farbrengen of Simchas Torah used to be Shabbos Breishis. Because like this, there was Farbrengen Leil Simchas Torah before Akofet. Then Yom Simchas Torah was the big Farbrengen. If Simchas Torah came out Thursday and Friday, Thursday and Friday, so it was a Farbrengen Thursday night for Simchas Torah, Leil Simchas Torah before Akofet. Then Friday Fanach was another Farbrengen for Yom Simchas Torah. Shabbos Breishis, which is the next day Mamish, there was a Farbrengen for Shabbos Mevorchim, Shabbos Breishis, and after Musaf. And then Fanach was the main Farbrengen, the big Farbrengen of Simchas Torah was right before the end, started right before the end of Shabbos Breishis. So then Avad, the Shabbos Breishis, the Simchas Torah came one hemshech, and the Rebbe would speak about it, and then for sure, Shabbos Breishis, Simchas Torah, and Mamish have one kesher. But even if it wasn't that, even if it was further away, or like this year is the furthest possible, that Shabbos is Mamish a full week, Simchas Torah is Sunday, and this is Mamish the Shabbos, but still it has a shaykhus to it. So we made the union of Shabbos Breishis, that we're talking about Shabbos Breishis now, this is Farbrengen Shabbos Breishis, is really connected to Simchas Torah. So we have to take the inyonim of Simchas Torah and bring it further. And Shabbos Breishis will be, as we say, Shabbos Breishis in the inyonim that have to do with Simchas Torah, because Shabbos Breishis and Simchas Torah go together. It's going to be for a whole year. So I'm going to go into one that could, like I said, anything that I'm going to say from the Farbrengen and the Sichos, everyone knows. But it's good to repeat it again. One of the Sichos, the Rebbe brings the word of the Frierdiker Rebbe. Frierdiker Rebbe said that Simchas Torah at night, it's kedai, that everyone should make Kiddush themselves. Like this, you could make Kiddush yourself, you could be Yetzer from somebody else. But Simchas Torah at night, it's kedai to make Kiddush yourself. And he said, why? Because if you make Kiddush yourself, you will make the Shechayonu yourself. And Simchas Torah, it's kedai, everyone should make the Shechayonu. And he said, why? Because Shechayonu, Simchas Torah, goes not only on the Yontif, it goes also on the Torah. And that's why it's kedai that everyone should make Shechayonu, should make the Kiddush himself, so he should be able to make Shechayonu himself on Torah. Nevertheless, even though the Frierdiker Rebbe said and the Rebbe chazed it over, the Rebbe would usually ask, by this Farbrengen, somebody should make out loud Kiddush to be Meitzi, those that want to be Yetzer. You know, and the Rebbe Bavon, and even though the Frierdiker Rebbe said you should make yourself, but those that can't or whatever, do Yetzer. Which, by the way, shows the Rebbe's Savas Yisrael that even though he felt that Rebbe said that you should make yourself, but he always gave a place for somebody else or somebody who can't, a different way, always made it as easy as possible for a Yid to do the right thing. But anyway, that was the word of the Frierdiker Rebbe. So the Rebbe, one of the Farbrengen, asked the Shaila, we make Shechayonu for something new. Why do we make Shechayonu for Torah? What's Simchas Torah? Simchas Torah is the siyum of Torah. We finish Torah, so it's not a beginning, it's not something new. Paket, it's finishing something old. Why would we make Shechayonu for Torah? Elamite must be that the Shechayonu is made for the fact that we're starting the Torah again. So it's not basically made for this end, but it's made for something new. Shechayonu is for Dover Chodesh. So it's something new that we're starting the Torah again. But the Rebbe asked, what's the pshat starting the Torah again? There's a chiyuv tmidi. There's a chiyuv always to learn Torah. It's not like something new. We're continuing. There's a chiyuv, well, not the pshat that finished. The chiyuv is over. Now is a new chiyuv that starts to learn Torah. Then we understand. You make shechayonu, something that's a new chiyuv that comes mizman lizman. Just like for the yontiv itself. The yontiv is mizman lizman. You make shechayonu. So there's a new chiyuv now to learn Torah. You make shechayonu. There's no new chiyuv. The chiyuv is one chiyuv. It's always a chiyuv tmidi. So why would we say shechayonu? And so the Rebbe explained that the pshat is because we finished learning the whole Torah Shebiksav, and we're starting now. The new way to learn has to be be'ein areich to the way it was before. It's something new. He even used the example of Reb Zera. When Reb Zera went to learn Talmud Yerushalmi, so he fasted, so he should forget Talmud Bavli, so it shouldn't interfere with understanding Talmud Yerushalmi. Why? Because Yerushalmi, like Abba Bavli, is be'ein areich. It's be'ein areich. It's mamish l'mayla from all the hagbolas, and it's a new thing. The old thing is mavalvu. So the Rebbe said that the union of Torah that we make shechiona for, because on Simchas Torah, when we're starting the Torah again, we have to start with a new chayes, with a ein areich l'gabe the way we learned before. Now, this nakuda that the Rebbe said, that we have to start it, and it should be be'ein areich before, in the new Geda Mamish, l'gabe before, it's no, not together at all, like a blig vula, gabe gvula, whatever the Lashonis will use, is something that the Rebbe said many times, l'gabe all kinds of different things. Mashal Pesach time, the Rebbe always spoke many times, the union of Pesach means to jump. Derech diluk. What's diluk? You have to go to a madrege be'ein areich l'gabe it was before. Any madrege that you reach, you go, that is be'erech to the one before, it's not really going. Because since it's be'erech, you never really left the level of before. You just went a little bit better, higher. When we say you have to jump means there's a gap in between, something be'ein areich. So the Rebbe spoke then in the letters of Pesach, the Rebbe writes, opinion of going b'derech dilug, jumping, going be'ein areich. And other times the Rebbe said you'd have to give everything be'ein areich. So, same thing here, the Rebbe said you have to start learning be'ein areich. The shaila is, I mean, who are we talking to people like us? The shaykh is to start be'ein areich, do things be'ligvul and jump and go, things which are madrege. About tzaddikim, you could say big things, but when you talk to some people, and the Rebbe Gemont a lot of times, he said this union of be'ein areich and be'ligvul and all these type of things. So the pshat is the Rebbe doesn't mean be'ein areich, that mamish the real be'ein areich. Be'ein areich, everyone legabe his own matzev. Everyone legabe his own matzev should be be'ein areich, what he's doing now, be'ein areich legabe before. Which in simple words means, be'ein areich means a little bit more than you think you're able to do. A little bit more, that by us is be'ein areich. It's a like a second chassidus that it says, What's b'chol me'idecha? Me'idecha means bli gvul. How does me'idecha mean bli gvul? Me'ed is bli gvul. How is me'ed bli gvul? Me'ed means very. So the pshat is, let's say something is very good. Now, if it's a certain level of good, it's not very, because l'gabe madrege higher, it's not so good. So when we say me'ed very means higher than anything before. So it must be that it's a new complete madrege. But anyway, the word b'chol me'edcha means that you have to do it b'ligvul. But it says in Chassidus has to be me'edcha. The Eibusher doesn't expect you to do b'ligvul, the highest madreges. Me'edcha means according to your madrege. Each person according to him. Like when it says in the Gei Tzedakah, you give a little bit more than you think you can. It's only a little bit, only asking like in Tanya it says based on the Gemara, learns ve'echad is only one, but it's a little bit more than usual than you're able to do. Now, so the Eibusher says the Eibusher repays his bligvul. There's a pasuk that says L'cha Hashem hachesed ki ata teshalem leish kemaseyu. The Eibusher, you do chesed, and he pays everybody kemaseyu as like he does. And Chassidus says the kasha, what's the big chesed? If someone works for you, you got to pay him. You got to pay him according to his work. What's the big deal? Why make a big fuss of the Eibusher? Oh, the Eibusher pays you. The shalom mishka maseyo. So Chassidus says the pshat is like this. The Eibusher wants you to go bli gvul, and you do bli gvul of yours, very little, but for you it's bli gvul. And the Eibusher pays you kemaseyo the same way you at bli gvul. He also pays you, but his bli gvul. But what he expects of us is only a little bit more than regular. Which means a person has to go out. In this thing we're talking about is in learning Torah, and the same thing is in mitzvahs and everything, a little bit to go out of your comfort zone. a little bit more. People, are used to that they do as much as you feel comfortable with, be a little bit more than comfort. So when the Rebbe said this, and he said many times this word that you start learning it again, before, he said it many years in Chastera, and it sounds overwhelming, but really it's not. All he means is to do a little bit more than you feel comfortable. Go a little bit out of your comfort zone. Like it says in Chassidus B'negei Mesiras Nefesh, Mesiras Harotzen, something that you don't really want to do, or it's not so comfortable to do it. And this is what the Rebbe Gemont, any time when the Rebbe spoke, some for other people, this means Takevorke Pshute, when the Rebbe spoke with Derech Dilug, you have to do jump, meaning you go Beina Reichel, Gabet before, could mean Haim Madreges. But the simple people like us, what it means is a little bit more than a person feels comfortable. And that's what we would call in the Amolike Sprach, we would call Iskafje. Iskafje would mean Mir Wiltzach. Not exactly. So in Lubavitch, the Bochrim in Lubavitch, Shebe Lubavitch, there Iskafje was Poshet Kipshute, Begashmi, the food that's good you didn't eat, and all kinds. That's not what's Monza from us now. Then it was like that. Just Derech Hag, I want to mention, I once was speaking to the Peretz Mochkin. So he told me that when he came to Lubavitch, he's a young kid. I think his house where he lived, his city, wasn't that far. It was far, but not that far. I think it was 3 years that he didn't come home. Finally, he came home once to see his parents. Oh, you can imagine his mother was so happy to see. And he was there, I don't know how long, a few days in the house. So one of the days he was there, she walks over to him. Oh, her son just came. She wants to give him. So she says, Peretzel. That's what he told me. I was speaking to him. He's my aunt was his daughter. So I used to come in a lot of times to the house there. So he says, his mother says to him, Peretzel, if she will stand apple. Maybe you want an apple. No, middle of the day, not a meal. It's not middle of the day, like you would offer now somebody a candy at this place. I yingle, you come and I hang, I for your. So he says to me, I looked at my mother. To me, it was as if she offered me a piece of chazer. Im mitten Tag stamma say essen an apple because an apple tastes good. It was when he says, with this lotion, he says, Mamish, as if she'd offer me a shtickle chazer. So that was the iskafia of those days. Now is not what's we want iskafia. But this is type of iskafia, which basically means that the Rebbe Gemont is the same thing as the other Rebbe Gemont. Nice of all the other things that the Rebbe zugelegt with everything. This also, when he said, and you have to learn it means to go a little bit beyond. A little bit beyond could mean in different inyonim. Could be whether in Kamos or in Eichus, to add another 2 minutes to learning a day. And if a person doesn't have a shir learning, to start the shir, start with the chavrusa, or even if you learn a little bit, not only bisman, more to learn a little bit deeper, but to add something. And that's what the Rebbe Gemont is in Chastain. And for that, we go to Shechiona. Shechiona, which is something new, is the new meaning bein areich. If a person goes beyond what he thinks he's able to do, that's already called bein areich legabas. That's called me'et shelcho. That's amarid. So when we're talking about Shabbos Breishis, which is after Simchas Torah, and Simchas Torah we made Shechona for Torah, and this is Shabbos Breishis, which is Hemshech to Simchas Torah. This is what we have to focus on, and especially it's connected to Yankev Alochadarki, that whatever we had throughout the whole Tishrei, we have to take along now on our way. So what we have to do is we have to bring it. So there's two things here. There's what we have to do about others. Now we go and everyone goes home to the shlichus and starts his aveda. So whether it's shliach, hishlichus, or even if you're not an official shliach, you have things to do. Also gab others. But you have to do it out of yourself. The Rebbe said many times there are two things. There are aveda matzmeh, aveda zalosei. When the Rebbe established Siri Agudas Chabad, there's the letter that he established. When he established Siri Agudas Chabad in America, there's an official letter that Reb David, they're asking all of Shalom with Chazer, that Loshen, always, by all the Tzach conventions, he would Chazer the word. He said to do something, Avedi Matzmei, Avedim Zolosei. The Rebbe did not forget about the Avedi Matzmei. Avedim Zolosei and Avedim Matzmei. So you have to take both. So the Yankev Olachadarke, a lot of it is when I got, but now you're going out into the Welt and you got to be Mevarer the Welt and work to that to the top of your possible. But I got to do Aveda Matzmi also. And the BEM is connected. The Aveda im Zolose will work much better if you Aveda Matzmi. So one of the things in what we see from the Rebbe Negei Simchas Torah and Negei Shabbos Breishis, which is the Hemshech to Simchas Torah, is Negei the learning to add epis vos a little bit going out of our comfort zone. And that's what the Shechyon of Simchas Torah is. And Shabbos Breishis, as I said, is the Hemshech to Simchas Torah, the Hemshech to Shechyon. And Bechlal, I said before, by the Rebbe, Shabbos Breishis was always like a part of Simchas Torah. You know, that the Rebbe wanted that the Chazan who davened for the Omed on Shabbos Breishis should daven on the tunes of Yontif. Remember quite a few times. I can't say I remember from the last years, but I remember from the earlier years that the Chazan would daven. And it should be Moshe Tolashevsky's daven for the Omed, and daven, you know, with the tune of Simchas Torah. And I think, if I remember correctly, even if it was a kvias like this year, that Simchas Torah was a full week ahead. But by the Rebbe, it was still Simchas Torah. It's similar to what the Rebbe told the story when he gave the Frierdiker Rebbe, that was after Shavuos. And someone wrote a letter to the Frierdiker Rebbe, and the Frierdiker Rebbe didn't answer, so he asked Chatzar Fagin, and Chatzar Fagin asked the Frierdiker Rebbe. He says he didn't answer him. So he said, it was a few days, I don't know how many days after Shavuos. So the Frierdiker said, I still didn't come down the mountain. Har Sinai, noch nicht darauf vom Berg. So when the Rebbe Simchas Torah was always, Shabbos Breishis was always a time where he noch nicht arop vom Berg. So whatever we have Simchas Torah, we have in Shabbos Breishis, and if it's a longer time, means that Simchas Torah is a longer Simchas Torah, long extension of Simchas Torah, and there's a lot more for the Yankev Olachadarke to take along. And what it is the way the Rebbe would speak always about Limud Torah. Simchas Torah was the time, he would speak other things also, all kinds of things. But in the Kud of Simchas Torah was the union of doing Mechazek, learning Torah. Now to us, it's another Nakuda, since we know that Simchas Torah is the Rebbe's Yontif. So when we're talking about Mechazek, the learning Torah from Simchas Torah, there's another Nakuda here to be Mechazek, the learning of the Rebbe's Torah. To add to that, Baruch Hashem, the learning of Simchas Sichos is going on now, with Baldik, it's Baldik. But what the Rebbe wants is epis, those that could add a little more, even if you can't, to add a little bit more in the Rebbe's Torah. Because Simchas Torah, that's the Rebbe's Yontif. We know according to the Cheshbon of the Ushpizin, like I said, what I'm saying is elementary stuff, everyone knows, but good to repeat it, that according to the Ushpizin, starting from the Baal Shem Tov, that comes out of the Rebbe Bezmazbe, that the Frierdiker Rebbe is Shmini Atzeres. And automatically the Rebbe Simchas Torah. It goes along also with the Sfiris. That's already got to go a little bit more, that there we count the Rabbeim in a different cheshbon. It's a different way we count. Shem Tov the Magid is Keser, the Alter Rebbe is Chochmah, and the Mitler Rebbe is Bine, the Matzedek is Das, and then it jumps. Anyway, the bottom line is that the Rebbe Rashab is Heid. The member of Tov Chav Zayin, the Rebbe by Farbrengen, told over that the Frierdiker Rebbe, he said the Frierdiker Rebbe didn't talk about himself too much things. But once he was speaking about the Sfiras, and he made a cheshbon that this way the Sfiras are, so it comes out that Rebbe Marash is Netzach. I don't know how the cheshbon how it works. We have to figure out because it doesn't fit. Because what happened to that, after Das, Ches Buddha Tifer. Anyway, but the Rebbe Marash is Netzach, and he said the Frierdiker Rebbe said the Tate is Heid, and then the Frierdiker Rebbe said V'chulu. So the Rebbe said that by him saying V'chulu, we understood what he meant. That his father, the Rebbe Rashab, is Heid, and he is Yisaid. And then the Rebbe continued talking at that Inyan, and as he's continued to talk, he says, and therefore it comes out that the Rebbe Rashab is Heid, and the Shver is Yisaid V'chulu. So the same lotion that the Frierdiker Rebbe used after Heid, V'chulu. So the Rebbe Taichtus, he meant Yisaid. So the Rebbe used that when he said that the Shver is Yisaid, V'chulu. But he's Sviras HaMalchus. So that's one cheshbon. But here we're talking about the cheshbon of the Shvizin. So it comes out, we start from the Baal Shem Tov, go to Rabbeim. The Frierdiker Rebbe is Shmini Atzeres, and the Rebbe is Simchas Torah. And as we know, Taki, that the Rebbe Simchas Torah was the top Yontev. We know that even before the Nesias, the Rebbe would dance Simchas Torah. It's made it hours, he would stand and dance. They even say, again, the story that we say, I don't know, that's what they say, that people, when the Rebbe danced Hakofes, people like try to avoid the Rebbe standing behind them, because if the Rebbe stood behind somebody and he would hold on to him, that person basically was stuck. That's what they say, because the Rebbe would dance for hours, and no one had the chutzpah that if the Rebbe is holding him by the shoulders, he should raise a charois and get out of it. So he had to stay there. So people tried to avoid it. People didn't want to stay for hours. That's what they say. Again, I don't know, but it definitely, the Rebbe danced a lot. They even say once when the Frierdiker Rebbe was not feeling well, and dancing downstairs, making the noise in the shul would affect the Frierdiker Rebbe, would hear it, and he was not feeling well. So they say that the Rebbe said, let's take off the shoes. They took off the shoes, and they danced without shoes, so it shouldn't make noise. But the Rebbe danced. Simchas Torah was by the Rebbe. This was the Rebbe's yontif from before. Say the year that the Rebbe left Russia, when the Frierdiker Rebbe left Russia, Tofresh Peches, right after Simchas Torah, the Rebbe was on that same list, but the Rebbe didn't go with the Frierdiker Rebbe, because for that, Simchas Torah, the Rebbe went home to Katrinaslav to be with his parents. And then he went by himself, and he met up with them later. But that's Simchas Torah, they say in Katrinaslav, he was dancing a lot. So some people touched that he was dancing so much there because the parents knew and the Rebbe knew that he's going away, and who knows when they're going to see each other again. They didn't know. And the emissaries, his father, he never saw again. His mother, he saw in Zion. So that's why, and it was a very sad feeling. So in order to overcome that sad feeling, the Rebbe danced a lot. As a Zoktman, again, these things that from Avara, but it's not only because of that. Simchas Torah by the Rebbe was special. By the Rebbe's father also. When my uncle came out of Russia, my mother's brother, Tovshin Chovtes, he came out of Russia. So we're talking, he came Simchas Torah, he came to America, Tovshin Chovtes. I think it was Hashem Mishpotim. So when he came the next Simchas Torah and he saw Hakafah by the Rebbe and they heard singing the Nigun, the Rebbe's father's Nigun, he says, yeah, he remembers exactly how it was by the Rebbe's father in Katrinaslav. And how the Rebbe's father was standing there also making with his hands, that reminded him mamish like that. So that's, but by the Rebbe, we know it for sure, it was his day. So Simchas Torah is the Rebbe's yontif. So to us, all the yonim that have to do with Simchas Torah are closer, because to us we feel close that this is what our door, this is the Rebbe, and all the yonim of Simchas Torah have to be closer to our heart and all the heroes and things. So when the Rebbe spoke about Simchas Torah, the fact that you have to give the abyssal, let's call it abyssal abroch, and a little bit, learn a little bit more. It has to do, besides everything else, to his kashas of the Rebbe of Simchas Torah, even though we have to do it because that's the right thing to do. So this is always a side benefit, that this is a stronger union of his kashas. And the emes is that when it comes to Simchas Torah, what gives us Takya Chayas? We know that in all Lubavitcher communities, Simchas Torah is very special. Even this year, with all the Shverikkeit and with all the restrictions and everything, all over, all the Shluchim and all Anash made the most of it to be able to have a real Freilach Simchas Torah. What gives us the Keach? The Keach came from remembering how Simchas Torah was by the Rebbe. And remembering in the real way, remembering not just to remember, Niskorim V'Nasim, remembering and mamish, by thinking about it, you're there. And if you're there, your Begashmi is here, and you're connecting to there, that gives you the real chayas, as if you're standing by the Rebbe. And that's how the feeling is. And that's how we all take it. Where your machshava is, that's where you are. So if you have that in mind and you reminded yourself how it was by the Rebbe, that gave chayas.
L'chaim.
L'chaim v'levrocha. Now, this is something I'm sure in every community, in every lavish community, it came Simchas Torah. What was the discussion? What was the talk by the Farbrengen or whatever type of style it was this year, different than always, whatever was this talk? To remember how it was. We know the famous expression everyone uses, Misha Liro Simchas Torah by the Rebbe, Liro Simchas Torah Miyom, Al Derech the Washman, it says by Simchas Yeshiva. But that's what gives chayas, especially Simchas Torah. You could say by everything like that. The Skislev, you remind yourself how it by the Rebbe, the Skislev is Gorandish. But Simchas Torah is something much more special. When you start reminding yourself how with the Rebbe Simchas Torah, you are there. And if you're there, you danced in Miami or you danced whatever the city you were dancing, you felt you're dancing by the Rebbe. And that's the special heritage that you had, Simchas Torah. Chitaka there, reason the famous word in Maisa with Baal Shem Tov, that he once, after Shemon Esrei in his minyan, came over to a guy and gave him Shalom Aleichem. So he said, I mentioned the story the other time. So he said, what's Shalom Aleichem? I was here the whole time. He said, yeah, but in the middle of Shemon Esrei, in your mind, you were in Leipzig and you were in this city and that city, you're in Varsha, and you, after Shemon Esrei, you came back. So I have to give you Shalom Aleichem. That's how it was. That's how we should feel. And that's how we all felt. We felt it. Now, everyone spoke about it and everyone knows it, but I think it's Kedai to go over a little bit of the inyanim of Simchas Torah, because like this, Simchas Torah is b'shas ma'aseh. Now what we have to do is we take up the Simchas Torah and we have to take it along for the whole year. Now is the Simchas Torah, the Shabbos Breishis, v'mishtel tzachavek, to the whole year. It's the Yankev Holach al Darki for the whole year. So now we have to rethink about Simchas Torah, but now we're standing a little bit back. We're not in the middle of Akofes. By Akofes, you're excited, Akofes. Now we're a little bit, now we're regular. And if you start thinking how it was by the Rebbe and the uplifting you had, that gives you it lifts you up even more for the whole year. Not only that, now we could prava Akofes properly, like we did. We prava Akofes properly because B'shas Ma'aseh we're thinking, when you dance the first Akofes, you close your eyes and you were thinking, looking, remember, yeah, the Rebbe was dancing and we see it. Or other Akofes, you see the Rebbe standing there, but now it's not by Akofes. Now we're more regular, more normal, and now to think about it, that things. So I just want to mention a few of the things that it was by just things that from things that everyone can say according to his feeling. So I could just say the way the feeling. Everyone knows that the 48 hours by the Rebbe Simchas Torah is given a tefach hecher from Welt, 10 tefachim hecher from Welt. We're the mile from Olam. Now the real shot is Olam is Maloshan Helem. There was no Helem and Elokus. You felt in Gan Eden. You felt in a place where this Nishtokin Welt. Sido Welt. There was a Welt, and gegessen, getrunken, this. It didn't mean anything. It was the feeling that we got. And not only by Akofes, also by Farbrengens of Simchas Torah. Every Farbrengen, we could say, we always say about it, the Farbrengens of Simchas Torah were at this special Farbrengens. Like I said before, there were sometimes Simchas Torah, there were 4 Farbrengens. Leil Simchas Torah before Akofes, Yem Simchas Torah, then Shabbos Breishis if it was the next day, and the next big Farbrengen, Shabbos Breishis, 4 Farbrengens in a row. And these were different types of Farbrengens. The Moshe, I want to go say the Farbrengen of Leil Simchas Torah before Akofes started at 9 o'clock and it went till 12:30, and then the Rebbe went to his room, and then a while later came out and they set up the room for Akofes, etc., etc. Later they didn't have to set it so much; they set it up differently. But I'm talking about the years of the Chofs and the beginning of the Lametz. I have to say that my memory on those years are much more than from later, even though later is closer. But you know, certain time when you live in it more, time when you're a bocher or right after you got married, this you live in it. It bleibt reingekritzt in Herzen. It's something that's there. So from those years, I remember more. So the Farbrengen of Leil Simchas Torah was a different Farbrengen than regular. First of all, even the crowd, there was most of the guys went to Taluche. Some came back earlier, some came back later. So it was much more empty. And because it was much more empty, I'm talking about in the Chofs, there used to be people, fremde people, even modern people who used to be inside by the Farbrengen. Because in those years, Kronite had 100,000 Yidden, they had all kinds of Yidden. And Simchas Torah, outside of 770, it's a gedreht, 1000 Menschen. 1000 Menschen would be outside 770, not Lubavitcher. And they never got into the Farbrengen. It was I hate to say this word, a hangout. It was a time when, but Simchas Torah at night, even those people got in because the inside was a lot of place. So a lot of, and the Rebbe would speak certain things which are shaykhs to them. I don't know if people picked that up. The Rebbe would use a lot of English words. Many Farbrenges of Leil Simchas Torah, the Rebbe would use English words. And you could see with the Kavod, how the Rebbe was aufgelegt, the Rebbe was very freilach, before a coffee, Simchas Torah, to say things to people. I remember one thing, I had this over one, but it has nothing to do with what I'm saying, but just derech hagav, there was someone standing not far from me, because it was no crowd. So he was standing there, it was in the place of the Bachli, but he was, and I'm looking, I saw him, not far from me, and he puts his hand in his pocket, took out a little bottle of mashke, and takes that bottle to the Rebbe and says, L'chaim. The Rebbe looks at him, and not across the whole room, but the Rebbe says out loud to him, Der Schwer hat nicht Geides gewähnt trinken von a bottle. My father-in-law did not like when you drink from a bottle. I don't know if he meant only mashke or other things also. I'm saying it's all because there was a lot of space there. So B'meile, the Farbrengen was, I wouldn't say more English, but there are certain things that the Rebbe would say, which is, and I want to give an example of one Farbrengen from those years. A few of the things that the Rebbe said, which is great things, and that is Tovshin Chav Gimel, Leil Simchas Torah Chav Gimel. That Farbrengen is, for me, it's reingekarrt in Herzen. One of the things that he said there, which is one of the famous things, he told the story when he gave the Piafkis. He said it to Leil Simchas Torah. The story with the Mittel Rebbe, when the Mittel Rebbe was a young boy, he learned by the Malamed and I think Berel, and he was right b'shchenes to Avram the doctor, and he overheard, it was Elul time, he overheard a doctor saying, "Sie sind tief in Elul, but noch nicht zugegreit die Piafkis." Piafkis are the leeches, and the leeches, these were used to draw blood. And the Rebbe explained what was it used for. When you had blood that was no good, you had to get it out, and also to stop the resichas adomim, even the good blood that shouldn't be high blood pressure, I guess. The Rebbe said nowadays we have different ways of controlling it. So the doctors would collect, during summertime, they would collect the piafkes and they would use it throughout the year. And this was already Elul. He said, Shetif in Elul, and when it comes winter, you can't get them because they hide. But noch nicht zugegreit the piafkes. I didn't prepare yet the piafkes. That's what the Mittel Rebbe had as a child. And when he went out, he saw some chassidim standing and talking. So he turns around to them. Noch nicht zugegreit the piafkes. When you steht on Rete, you're talking. So they imagine that he said it, that he heard it from the Alter Rebbe. They started learning, what does that mean? And they found out that the Alter Rebbe didn't say it. When it got to the Alter Rebbe said, yeah, this is the word of Hashem, that from every gashmatik thing, everything you see, you have to learn a. And he said, Miriam, we worked on it for this thing. But when the kinder, it was derech hateva. He meant to say by his son, that the Mittel Rebbe already, he didn't have to teach him that it automatically took it. But the Friedrich Rebbe finished off when he told the story that Yenem Rosh Hashanah, the floor was wet from tears, from this Aveda, this word. On Simchas Torah, there were a lot of shoes torn, torn from dancing for this word. But this whole Nakuda the Rebbe spoke about was Leil Simchas Torah. And then the Rebbe explained it, not much interesting, but the Rebbe explained it, and he said that to get rid of the bad blood, versteht man what that means. Bad blood is no good. But what is the pshat? That you have to also control the resichas adomim, the good blood, the heat and the good blood. What's wrong with that? What's wrong with heat? And if it's good, but the Rebbe explained that even in good things, you also have to know how it goes. Because sometimes you could have something good, And if you have too much sikha, the sikha means heat and too much excitement, you might do the wrong thing. Someone is excited to daven, he might get up in the morning and without nagelvas or anything, he'll go and run and daven because he wants to daven. You gotta know what your limits. You gotta know what you have to do. Then I gave a few more examples in the scene of the Sichas Adomim. But that Sicha was said, and that's Leil Simchas Torah. Another thing that the Rebbe said that Leil Simchas Torah. And that's when he spoke, because he saw, I guess, I don't know, he saw people there that this type. He spoke about Sunday school and used the English word Sunday school. He said, Sunday school, what you learned there already? He said, in Sunday school, first of all, you have a half hour of singing, and then 50 minutes, you get already of talking about Abraham and Isaac and Jacob, and the children don't even know if that's Torah or not, but it's still better than nothing. And you have to see that the children should get from it. And from that, you go to the afternoon school. And from the afternoon school, you could see that they go into a regular Jewish school. And they never used English words. What else? I'm just thinking, what other words did he use? In this Teichen, he used English words. What were the words they used? Sunday, he said, I don't remember. But this was all an example of the Farbrengen. Then you had in that same Farbrengen of Topshin Gimel, was that famous Otadosh Teidi Yitzhara, which I had it over 100 times, because that was a moment that Talmud and the Numen. The Rebbe Chalak, this Farbrengen, he would explain the Psukim about Torah. So the Rebbe explained it based on the word of the Baal Shem Tov, and then later a word of the Friedrich Rebbe, a different posik. So the Rebbe then started saying, after all this is said and done, but the Yetzer Hara comes along and says, I'm also here. In other words, that when you're involved in these things, the Chura, you shouldn't care about Gashmias. You shouldn't care about yourself. And nevertheless, the Rebbe said it's possible that in this thing, the Yetzer Hara gets involved. Chura Rebbe said, what do we should care about Kova? What do we care if people listen to you or not? I have to say this, it sounded like it was really talking about himself. In other words, why should we care if in such a matzav? But the Yetzer Hara is here. And the Yetzer Hara says, du sagst ein Wort von Baal Shem Tov, soll sein ein Wort von Baal Shem Tov. Du sagst ein Wort von dem schwer, sein Wort von dem schwer. Aber ich bin nicht da, I'm here too. And then he started banging on the table. And he started crying. You can't imagine how the Rebbe was crying. And he put his head down. How often did he do that? He put his head down and was crying. So this was all part of this Farbrengen. As an example of a Farbrengen. These Farbrengen liegt in Kopf Mamish. Then the Rebbe, that's the same Farbrengen. So, this was already later by the Nigen. Afterwards, by the Nine Nigen, that's when the Rebbe taught the Nigen Stavya Pitu. And the Rebbe explained what the union behind it is. And the next night, by the Farbrengen, the Rebbe spoke about it again. That everyone knows this. And the Rebbe repeated the Nigen and explained the Nigen Barichas. First, by the Leil Simchas Torah, after Akofis, he explained the thing a little bit. That you have to make a cheshbon tzedek, and when it comes now, this time, you have to sing, what did you miss out? And you have to make a cheshbon. And if you make a cheshbon, you realize that's a gate nicht. So you have to have Yain HaMeshaker, and then you have Yain HaMesameach. And the next night, he explained it by Riches. But B'shas, he's saying the Nigen again the next night. That's when he said, Oy cheshbon tzedek, das meint man mir und dir und dir und dir. That's what he said. And he pointed to all three parts of the shul. And this was all in this Farbrengen of Leil Simchas Torah. But not only that, this time of the year was something very, very special. And like I said before, sometimes there were 4 Farbrengens. I can tell you, in the month of Cheshvan, there were not too many Farbrengens, Bechlal. Bechlal, there wasn't. Even Shabbos. Later years, different. There was no Farbrengens. Unless Cheshvan came out on Shabbos. So, Kimat a whole month. Was haben sich die Bochem gekocht? in the Farbrengens, that last Farbrengens from Tisha B'chlal, but mainly from the Farbrengens of Simchas Torah. In them is been gelegen. It was not so easy, I have to tell you that, because these are 4 Farbrengens that there was no time for Chazorah till after Yontiv. Imagine, Leil Simchas Torah before Akofis, there was a Farbrengen. You couldn't have a Chazorah after that because there was Akofis after that. And after Akofis was those years, especially the new Nigen, and even later when there was no more Nigen, but it was going places, you couldn't have a Chazorah at 4 o'clock in the morning. Then the next night, especially if there was the Kviyas of Thursday and Friday, next night was the Farbrengen. So thereafter, what you could with it. And then Shabbos morning, there was Farbrengen, a few hours, and then there was a big Farbrengen Shabbos afternoon. So after Yontiv, you had to sit down and chazer the 4 Farbrengens and remember what the Rebbe said by this Farbrengen, what the Rebbe said by this Farbrengen. You look in the Hanochas and you look in the Nachem. These are hours upon hours upon hours of the Rebbe's talking. And then them to figure out and to remember what it is. Okay, Rabbi Leibel and Horab is sein gesund und stark with his Meredike Zikoren, and more than the Meredike Zikoren, it's more the tfisa that he has to be taped the Inyan b'meila. That's how he remembers it. Mali has a gewaldig Zikoren, but that's the to tape the Inyan b'meila. So, but still, it's not so poshet. Even with him, and then other people had to go there. You had to sit down and write it down. It was gekocht in them afterwards. That Simchas Torah was nimshich. Mamish till the next Farbrengen, sometimes was a month. Sometimes a month, and we lived with that. Now we remind ourselves now. We remind ourselves now how it was then. It gives us a chayes. Avade, the Tonish Leben Damol. Siddim used to say, Moche Timcha Zecher Amol Lake. Can't live with Amol. Over the Amol has to be now. If the Amol is Amol, that's technisch. Okay, so given the Amol has to give you chayes now. We have to live with it now. So when we live with it now, then it's there. It's not the same, and it's rein arech. But we have it. But this is what gives us chayes. So when we come to Shabbos Breishis and Hemshech to Simchas Torah, and Simchas Torah is the Rebbe's Yontiv. Simchas Torah is the Mela Ar Yontiv. Ali is Yontiv, but we also something special. So this is a time when we have to renew, think about it, and renew our iskashras and strengthen our learning. And there's a little bit more than before. The Rebbe said Bein Areh, but that would be enough Bein Areh for us. And in the Rebbe's Torah. And in the Rebbe's Torah. Actually, I want to say that in Breishis, there are quite a few sichas from the Rebbe, famous ones, which are made a dikinyonim, which are things which are classical when we're saying Gashmas Dike Sprach, which is Dafke Breishis. Those get a yisod, you say, but the Rebbe's, every sich of the Rebbe, most of them, is not just like other people who have a good pshat, a good beer and a inyan. So you have a good pshat in a posig, you have a good pshat. But the Rebbe, it's all musogim. Everything by the Rebbe, if Sanaya, you'll see, it comes at the Sanaya Gvort, and nicht a Naya Taich in a pshat, a Naya Kuk, a Naya Zachar. And in Breishis, you see it much more. I don't know, you know what? Maybe I don't know what I'm talking about. Not maybe, probably I don't know what I'm talking about. But everyone, because since I have the microphone, I'm saying my hergish. My hergish is in Breishis, you have certain things. And what I would like to do is maybe go through, whatever we say is the Rebbe, you have to say the Rebbe's Avort. So I would like to go through few of the nekudas of the sichas that are specifically on Breishis, which are made of the sichas. But I think for that, first we should say L'chaim, try to sing a ning like we tried other times in the Relations Gate. And then those that want to continue, just to continue over a few points from 4 sichas of them, which I'm sure every Lubavitcher who learns the sichas knows, but it's good to go to just to keep in the mind, to know, and take it along for the Halach Darke. We have to take along because of what guides us now. Now, there's no new sichas that we hear from the Rebbe. So what guides us now? All the inyanim of the Rebbe said, and the Rebbe said enough. The Rebbe put in so much. I don't want to say the words I'm saying because there's going to be apicursus. He put in enough that's going to could last us for hundreds of years. But Chas v'Sholom, the Mashiach is coming soon. But I'm saying they put in so much, and that's all the Rebbe teaching us because it's there already, and everything that we have we could take from there. But that's what we're going to live with. So we got to be mechazek that inyan. So good to say over, because the real thing is say over what the Rebbe says. So let's say L'chaim again, and let's try to sing an Nigen Epis. L'chaim, L'chaim. No. Let's maybe try. We tried it a lot of times. It geht nicht so gut, aber L'chaim kann jeder einer sagen, that's for sure. Because Mokim is not mapsig now, especially with this Zoom business. So everyone is muchen and mezumen to do the right thing. So, no, bleiben wir zu annehmen. Aber Frankfurt, der Refschrift, so annehmen.
If those who want to unmute themselves can unmute to sing.
Yeah, we should try. Let's try. Usually it doesn't. Es geht nicht zusammen, aber we try etwas. We gotta try.
And then I'm certainly from enough from the Menachem, but.
Hier von der Wanne nicht von dem Menachem.
Our Kofis again, since it's talk about the.
Once the Rebbe by Farbrengen said, we shall sing in our Kofis nigen. So they started singing the Rebbe's Kofis nigen. No. The one that they sang the Rebbe's Kofis, no. No, they started the other one. They started the one that they sing. And the Rebbe, and they sang it. So when they finished, the Rebbe said, das ist ein feiner Nigen. He said, das ist ein feiner Nigen, aber nicht das er gemeint. Which is, by the way, it's not the Rebbe's father's Nigen. They used to sing by a Kofis. They used to sing it by the Alter Rebbe, by Alter Rebbe's Kofis. They used to sing that Nigen. But anyway, so, but that's the Okay, we tried our best. So, like I said, I would like to do now is just go through a few points of a few of the, I think, 4 sichas. There's more. There's in Shabbos Breishis is dasach, but it's Kasov is the Rebbe Savor. That's what counts. That has the impact. By us, see, the difference is like this. By us, we're so into it, so we don't even appreciate it. When you chazer over a word of the Rebbe to fremde people, whether it's Litvische people or other Chassidim, they go out of their kelim. They didn't hear such sprach b'chlal. They don't. Betnish Divas are against it. Betnish don't count. But a regular, average guy who's ready to listen and he hears, it's mamish. It lights up his eyes. The way the Rebbe looks at things. So it's not just that it's a good shot. Looks at things and sees it. They get in this pole, get out from the kelim. I think I told you once my son was someplace, Chaim was someplace in a place, and he spoke, and they came over later. And he said, they came over, the people came over, thanked him, Agvaldik made it. So one guy, a Nadal Babich guy, comes over to him. Says, don't get so kratzt. You think people are praising you, so asimin that you're Gvaldik. Any Lubavitcher that gets up and speaks is the same way. Any Lubavitcher that says things, he says things of the Rebbe. So it's not that they hear the besser vot. It's a different kukah welt, a different kukah thing. So that I want to remember Mendel Bechter. He was a Shpia in Nachas HaChabad. He used to be a Satmer from the top Satmer Chassidim. When he was in German, he had a yeshiva exclusive for Mitsuyonim. He was such a talmid of the Rabbi Leibel, the Satmer Rebbe, that when the Satmer Rebbe once didn't feel good and he couldn't come to shul, they asked him, who should they give his aliyah, shishi? So he said, give it to Mendel Bechter. And then he became a Lubavitcher. And he said, I heard it from him. He said that when he started getting involved and Rabbi Leibel was living with him, he realized that for years, he didn't know that just about 20, 30 minutes away from here is Doa Za'ir Godel V'Shaint. He didn't know it, except people don't know. And it's not Shati here and the place 10,000 miles away is Doa P'Sayid. There's 20 minutes away from where I live is Doa Za'ir Godel. So we don't see the air. We don't see it. Because by us, it's very certain things that by them get in the oh, wow, I can witness public. The Rebbe put it into our minds, so it's very certain. So, Sof Kosof, it's the Rebbe Savar. So I just want to say over a few points. Number one, that famous Siche, why the Torah starts with a base. Now, some people are going to be looking at me and say, who are you talking to? You think you're talking to the people that don't know? We all know the Siche. I know you all know the Siche. I know the Siche. You guys know the Siche. Everyone knows the Siche. But it's kedai to repeat just in the kud of the Siche. That the Rebbe has the Shaila, why does the Torah start with the base? It's not the Rebbe Shaila. It says in Yerushalmi the Shaila. In Yerushalmi the answers because the letter base is the Rosh Tevis Brocha, and the Aleph is Rosh Tevis Orur. So we start with the base. Because Bemes just start with an Aleph. That's one answer. There's another answer that a base is the shape of the world. It says in Gemara, and it says in Yalkut, in Medrash, that the world is ke'achsadre. It has 3 sides and one side is open. I don't know what that means. I mean, in Gemara, you have to know what that means. I think the ArScroll tried to explain it in the Gashmis. I don't know if they know what they're talking about, but I don't know. That's what the Gemara says in Bava Basra, that the world is like a base. So since we're talking about the Welt, that's why the Torah starts with a base. Then it says in Kabbalah, the Torah starts with a base because there's 2 dargis. There's Torah in Atzilus and there's Torah in Biyah. And Torah in Atzilus is the first level, and Biyah, so the Torah that we have is already the base, the second dargis. So the Rebbe asks on all these shotim, on the first Torah that it's Torah starts with the base because of Lashtavis Brocha. Rebbe Nezer asks, there are certain words with a base that are not so good, and certain words with an aleph that are good. Why is it because of this? And then the second one, that the Torah starts with a base because it's the shape of the world. So the Torah, in other words, like this, Betzim should have started with an aleph. Because the world is like a base, the Torah starts with a base. The state has to follow the world. It's the opposite. The world was created to Shel Yisrael, not the Yidden, and the Torah, not the Torah because of the world. So the Torah is going to change the system because of the world. I'm just saying in the Kudah of the Shaila. And the third thing, the Rosh Hashanah, the Torah of Atzilus is Aleph, but we know in Kabbalah it says, Teroscha Shalim Elatonu, Teroscha Sheba Atzilus We have the same Torah. So what's the Torah? The bottom line is this: the Rebbe, this is wherever a chazer over the Sikha gate narus from the Kalim. The Rebbe says the word is the Shas you learn Torah. There are two things: there is the limud Torah, the chokhmah of the Torah, and then there is the kedusha of the Torah. It says by the Churban Beis Hamikdash, why was there a Churban Ashali Borcha B'Torah Tchila? It didn't say Birchas HaTorah. And the Rabbeinu Yena says, explained in the Bach, what the Pshat, they didn't make a Birchas HaTorah. I mean, I'm not saying the words like it says there. What do they care? It took half a second it takes to make the bracha. Doesn't mean that. Birchas HaTorah is show that you feel the kedusha of the Torah. They learned a lot of Torah, but the connection to the Eibishter, to the Torah, seeing the Neis Torah, that was missing. That's the most important thing. That's the bracha of Torah. And that is Borcha B'Torah Tchila, that comes first. So the first thing when you come to learn, the first thing is you have to have the feeling of the Kedushas HaTorah. The learning, the actual learning, that's the base. That's the second step. That's the real reason why the Torah starts with the base. Which the Pashtas, the Rebbe doesn't say, the Pashtas, that's the reason why Gemaras also start without base. Even though the Pashtas it is, or because there's a printing mistake by the printer, or he counted the Sharblat as Taf Aleph, and it's all the printer, but Azay geblieben by Yidden, and Azay Idos, Mele, there's a Inyan in it, the base, because learning, when you start learning, that's the base. And the Rebbe explains how this Pshat is the Nakuda of all the other three Pshatim. The Pshat in Torah is Bracha, because if you learn this way, then you have a Bracha. If you learn the other way, without feeling, like the Gemara says, Zocha, Nasa leisam chayim. That's the bracha. Lei zocha. What's that? Lei zocha. Zocha mit usgedel. Zichuch. If you don't learn it with a zichuch, it's not. And here the Rebbe says, I made it the geschmack word. This is pashta geschmack word. Know what geschmack word means? It's pashta geschmack. It's geschmack than a shtickle chocolate cake. See, a geschmack word. We find the story in Gemara that Talmei Amela gathered Shivim Skenim and wanted them to translate the Torah in Yevonis. But he was afraid they would make changes, so he took them all in separate rooms and made each one separate, translated separately. And the Eibishter put into the mind of them all, they made certain shinuyim. And one of the shinuyim, the first shinui was that instead of Breishis Bara Elikim, they translated Elikim Bara Breishis. Because otherwise you would think that there's a creature called Breishis created Elikim. So the Rebbe says, so it comes out from here that the way it's translated for the Goyim, it starts like with an Aleph. And that's the pshat. This whole nekuda, why it starts with the base, because you have to feel the kedushas haTorah. By goy doesn't shaykh. By goy taka the limud, that's all it is. So like it says in Medrash, if someone will tell you, chokhma yesh bagoyim, tamin, Torah yesh bagoyim al tamin. I der pshat. The goyim will learn Torah too. The Torah they learn is only chokhma. And that's why by Goyim it starts with an Aleph. So this is what the Pshat in the first in Yerushalmi that it starts with an Aleph, with a base, because that's the second darg, and that's why that's the Bracha. The second Pshat, that the Velt is like a base. So it's not the Pshat that Torah is following the Velt. By learning Torah the way you're supposed to, with the real Hergish of Yerushalayim and the Hergish of Kedushas HaTorah, you fix what the world is missing. The world is missing the fourth side. And by doing this, you fix that, because when it says that the world is missing a side, because God's Arich is here, that's a Sofen side. Sofen side is the one, and Sofen represents Klippim. It's Sofen Tiposach Haro. We have to fix the Klippa. How do you fix the Klippa? By learning the Torah the way you're supposed to. And when we say with Atzilus and Bria, the pshat is that in every madrege there is these two dargis. There is the Torah itself, and there is the higher dargim Torah. You have that Sayin Atzilus and Sayin Bria. And the Rebbe goes into Tarichas. This is one one thing. Another Sikha, just saying this is, I'm just saying over, just to chazer over, that's the best thing. And everything I said is to say over the Rebbe Savak. The union of why the first thing that David created was Eir. That's the first Sikha in Chelik Yud. And to me, that Sikha has a special feeling because our group started writing Likud Sichas. The first Sikha that we gave him was this Sikha. At the Stofshin Lamed Gimel, the whole story how the Rebbe was finally asked the Rebbe, and finally nothing gave to how it came about that the Rebbe Sof agreed to the Magia, and this is the first thing. So the Rebbe asked the Shaila there, why was the air created the first day? Air is not a Metzias. All it is, it makes you see what's there. But there is nothing there, there's no need for air. So if there's nothing created yet, what was the air for? And that not a protem there, but another Shaila. It says in Zohar, air is the gematria Rosh. Rosh means a secret. What's the connection? A gematria has to have a connection. What's the connection between light and a secret? Light is gilui, something that you see. A secret is behalten. Then it says that the Eibusher created the Yom Rishon, Gonzei. The Eibusher hid it. So what was the purpose of the creation for it if he hid it anyway? It says he hid it because he saw that the world is not deserving to use it. The Eibusher didn't know that before. The Nekuda that the Rebbe says is like this. The Medrash says that the Eibusher created the world similar to the way a person builds a building. The Torah was the difterois in Kesois. When a person builds something, he has blueprints. The Torah was the blueprints. So we see from here that the Eibusher created the world in the system the way we see now, the way a person when he builds. But first, when a person goes to do something, before he starts, he has the goal in mind. You have to put yourself a goal. You know what you're looking for. And then you start building. So the Eibusher set the goal of the whole tachlis of the Bria Seilam. The goal is you have to make light. You have to bring Meir, Eir and Sof has to be Meir. That's the goal of the whole creation. That's why that's the first thing that the Eibusher made. But on the other hand, when you have the goal, when you build, during the time of the building, you don't have the goal in mind, then you're involved in the building. But in it, darf sein behalten, that goal. That's the role. What's a secret? A secret means it's there, but it's not the gilui. So this nekuda, that the tachlis of everything is to make light, that's the first thing that the Eibusher made, and that's why he made the Eirishon and Gonzei, because when Gonzei hit it, it means it's there, but it's not the gilui. It'll become this Galam when Mashiach will come. Then the other famous Sikha, I'm just going to go through another Nekuda. The other famous Sikha is Menegei, the first Rashi, that Goyim say, Yidin listim atem, you stole Eretz Yisrael. And who's timing this? The Ummah Sa'elam, all the Goyim. And the Rebbe says, many kashas. First of all, why are all the Goyim timing? Took it away from the Canaanim. They should time them. The Zion Ummahs, why should the whole world time it? And second of all, what's their time? They didn't do the same thing. They didn't take away, they didn't go conquer one from another. The punkts of the Yidden, they have tinus. And why did they time? Originally, Eretz Yisrael was in the Chelik of Shem. When Noach divided the world, it was Chelik of Shem. The Canaanim came and took it away. So now we're taking it back. We're from Shem. I mean, what's the time? Anyway, the Rebbe has a beautiful Nekuda. Actually, at that time, Yuchvat, when the Rebbe made the Sanhedrin, so to speak, that all the Rabbanim, 71 Rabbanim, 72 Rabbanim should pasken that Eretz Yisrael belongs to Eden. Then he asked certain Rabbanim to speak by the Farbrengen. So Rabbi Mentlik, when the Rebbe asked Rabbi Mentlik to speak, this is the Sikha that he had. He said only a word of it, but he had a Sikha. So the Rebbe says like this. The Chiddush is, when someone conquers, it becomes his. If someone will come and conquer it from him, it'll become his. So every part of the world, even if it's conquered, potentially everybody else could get it. Everybody else, if someone else will come another country and conquer it, will get it. Eretz Yisrael, the Eibusher made that when the Eden conquered Eretz Yisrael, that's it. It belongs to the Eden no matter what. They could take it away, it still belongs to the Eden. That's their time. What we conquer, we know. We conquered it, it's only a zeitweilig, a time. In the meantime, it's a temporary thing. They could take it away and it goes to somebody else. But when you guys conquered, you took it away from everybody. Nobody could ever take it. Because Eretz Yisrael belongs to Eden no matter what. No matter what. And that's what Rashi says. Eretz Yisrael belongs to the Eden, even if it's not in their Rishus Begashmias. Eden, it belongs to the Eden. And that's why they tiny Listimatim, and the whole world tines Listimatim. And the fact that they conquered is no rayik. So you conquered, why are you timing to us? It's a different type of conquering. And this is something that Torah says that Eretz Yisrael belongs to Eden. And the Rebbe Taka said when he spoke about Shtochim a lot of times, besides the time that he said that you can't give back, the Rebbe also kept on saying that Eretz Yisrael belongs to us no matter what. So I heard, this is Derech Hagav, I heard from a person who had a friend, who that friend of his was a friend of Kissinger. I don't know how many of you guys here remember Kissinger. Kissinger was a Secretary of State by Nixon. So this guy tells me that his friend told him that Kissinger said to him, once when Golda Meir had to go to America to speak to the president, I don't know what the time is. So Nixon, before she came, Nixon tells Kissinger, as he told me, his friend told him that whatever she's going to claim in the gay Israel, Yidden, this and that, I could answer it all. But I'm afraid of, if she's going to say the Bible, that the Torah says that it so belongs to Eden, then I have nothing to answer. Then she's right. That's what Nixon said to Kissinger. The problem was she never said it. When she came later, she didn't mention it. Had she mentioned it? Because even the Goyim know that. But the way the Rebbe explains the Rasha, the Pshat is that this is Eretz Yisrael belongs to Eden. And the Rebbe always used to say the Lashon, even it's still called Atzeina. And then one more sikha I want to mention, and that's the sikha, also a long sikha, but one of the things that Rasha says, the second Rasha of Parshas Breishis, what I said before was the second Rasha. When the Pasuk says, Breishis, Bora Lekim Shemaim Soretz, Rasha says, Ein HaKosov Eimer Elo Dark Sheni. The Pasuk says, you have to dash me. You have to have a drash here. And what is the drash? The drash is, Beis Reishis, Vishvil Yisrael, Shnikreis, Vishilater, Shnikreis. Then it says, if you want to explain it al pipshat, not drash, then you touch it Breishis. It's like a hamshake. Breishis in the beginning, not that this is the first, whatever. So the Rebbe asked, made it the Geshaila. If you could say it al pipshat, then why does Rasha start up saying, Eina kosev eimer elodor sheni? There's no other way to learn the pasuk, only drash. And then he continues the pshat, and then he says, in Tirtz, if you want to say pshat, there's a pshat too. And also, if there's a pshat in the drash, the pshat comes first. Rasha is pshuta shel mikra. So the Rebbe says that even in pshuta shel mikra, when you come to a pasuk which talks about Welt, is poshet. Ein hakosef eimer elo der sheni b'shul Yisrael b'shul HaTorah. When you learn the pasuk of Bria Sa'elov, you have to lechatchila know there's no other way to learn it but that the tachlis is not Welt. The tachlis is there. Then you have the poshet pshat in the pasuk. But Rashi starts of Ein HaKosef Eimer El Der Sheni. The pasuk itself, the Bria Salem is Der Sheni, and Der Sheni that is B'Shvil HaTorah. Keiner sagt nicht einreden, dass da mit sie ist von der Welt. And that's Pshuta Shel Mikra. Rashi says it before the Pshat. That's the real Pshuta Shel Mikra, that this is what the Welt is. Anyway, I'm just giving a few samples of things. There are more sikhs here, but this Parshas Breishis is a Yesod. Wie man stellt sich also geht das. And also now, because it's starting going into the whole year, which is Yankev Halachol Darkei, and the Rebbe has all kinds of biyurim with Yankev Halachol Darkei. The Darkei means his way, the ways of the world. Al derech, say, B'chol Rochecha do'eyu. Rochecha means the ways of people, not Eibish's ways. Yankev Halachol Darkei, but the Darkei has to be the derech Hashem, which the tachlis is that we have to take all the hamshachas and all the things that we got on this Tishrei, especially Sukkot and Simchas Torah, which is then it's in the Pnimius. And even though this year it wasn't the same as always because of the Matzav Ha'elam, but that's what the Eibishter wants. But Chassidim did the best that possible to do it, and the Shluchim did the best with all kinds of ways to bring this whole union of Simchas Torah to Klal Yisrael, to all the Yidden. And that we have to bring now, Darke, that we have to now look at the whole year. We should have unpack what we have, what we took on these Yom Tevim, to fight for yourself, fight for others, and to do what the Rebbe wants. And if we do what the Rebbe wants, for sure, the tachlis that the Rebbe wants is to bring Mashiach. And he left it for us. The Rebbe said, so they gave it to us, and it's more through the V'yankev Halachal Darkei, even because that's the bottom line. That's the Peil Mamish. The Peil Mamish is now what's going to be the Peil Mamish. All that is all Hakdomis and all you say this, but then you have to unpack. You can't. It's all compact. Muzbe Bakel. So that's what we have to do. So we have to take it a little bit serious. And Yibishter will give us the keichas, they will give the brachas, and we'll have it. Okay, so we'll say L'chaim again, and the wegstellen auf den richtigen Weg, die stellt sich weg, als geht us, and we should fear is the Rebbe's rotzen, say for ourselves, say for Azulas. Everybody should see what he can do his best, and as I said in the beginning, see him and Apsiche do more than the best. I mean, it's easier said than done. I could sit here in front of the camera and say, "Alle Grace Sachen." It's easy to say, but I'm just saying the fact. I help me, but then, know what? But after that, help to go a little bit beyond. That's and now, yeah, one-time thing is one thing. We start Simchas Torah, times a little bit beyond. But now, throughout the year, we'll gain a little bit more than the rotzen that we have. A little bit more. Let's not call it iskafia. The moment you call it iskafia, oh, very by iskafia. Now they just a little bit go beyond what's mir will say. No, like I said, easier said than done. Yirotzen sheyifulu advarim biu b'hashemim l'chaim l'chaim. Okay. The Eivish is a hoffen that zal alter opkommen. The matter van soort Wochen van besten neven. And we zijn bald Schnaz Gedola. Yirtzeh Hashem this year. Tovshim Pei Aleph, to zijn Lois Redden.
Amen.
What? Okay. Unless someone else wants to speak. Okay, a gute Woche, a gute Woche. So sein nur gute Sachen Tev Hanira van Nigla. Potter werden von der alle Torres, von der alle Hakbolas.
Amen.
So sein nur 8 Tev Chesed.
Amen.
Ja.
Okay, well, okay.
A gute Woche. Yeah. Yanke well okay. Yanke well we said after some Chastere. But now the Rebbe said there are many dargis. It says in the Marasha Maimeri, after Rosh Hashanah, say it, and after this. And now, I think Zion there was Zion Cheshuvs also, but now after Shabbos Breishis is another stage in the Yankev Holachol Darke.
The Rebbe brings something from the Rebbe brings something from the Frierdiker, something from a letter of Rish Beites, that there's 3 young Yaakov of Darke, and then making after Yom Kippur, after Simchas Torah, and after Shabbos Breishis.
Yeah. So I think based on the Rebbe Marasha Maimer, and I think the Rebbe even had, I think after Zayin Cheshvan, the Dargis. So this is the Dargis. This we're holding at this point, and it should be the real thing. A good Woche, a good Chodesh.
Good Woche, good Chodesh.
Not chocolate mousse.
Will you send the replay?